Hi. This is hardly an item of the 1940s, but it's definitely a collector's item. Well, I guess I better set it away before something happens to it. I'll put it among my other collector's items that reflect the life and the arts of America since 1900. Then I have something else I want to show you. But before I tell you about this, let's talk about sculpting in general during the 1940s. I'm going to call this period one of the use of new materials, and a period when many new forms were created. You know, for thousands of years, the same materials were always used for sculpting. Only natural materials like stone were available. But within the last 30 or 40 years, sculptors have been using all sorts of new materials. For example, stainless steel, plastics, aluminum, pounded copper, and a host of others. Now, these materials were taken and molded into odd forms. Wire, wood, and glass appeared to suggest men's muscles, wings of birds, and a host of other shapes. And movement was suggested, and forms which did not resemble anything which had yet existed came into being. And one sculptor designed medals for dishonor to be awarded to the Nazis, and he shaped eagles disguised as doves of peace. So you see, the sculptor could not just ignore the war, but instead he commented on the times. Now here is an interesting piece of work. This form was carved from a piece of butternut wood, and it was done by a friend of mine right here at the college, Mr. Phil Barnard. In this particular work, an attempt is made to adhere to the grain of the wood. Just look at the texture in that. It's called The Sister of a Mr. Moore. I'll just put it over here with my other collector's items, and we'll look at some of the other work done during the 30s and 40s. I pulled this book from the case because it has several photos of the sculptings then. Now, well, here we are. Now, this shows an example of the use of hammered copper. It's Unknown Soldier by Saul Bazerman, a powerful figure tragically deprived of his strength. Quite a contrast with his My Mother and its melancholy appearance. And carved in a type of stone called York fossils is William Zorrock's Affection. And this is a stainless steel heroic plaque, symbolic of news, the design of Isamu Noguchi. It's above the entrance to the Associated Press building in Rockefeller Center in New York City. And working in plastic, Leo Amino created this form called Transfiguration. Wild Boars is carved from granite on a miniature scale and is by Heinz Warnecke. Now here is one of the works of Alexander Calder, known for his movable suspended compositions called mobiles. Now this metal sculpting constantly takes on different aspects as it moves about. Calder uses a variety of materials, but his characteristic medium is metal. Mobiles, this one is called Black Spread, are strictly American in origin. And these figures are the work of the Swedish-American Carl Milles, the Orpheus Fountain. And on a much larger scale are these faces boldly carved from the side of Mount Rushmore as a national memorial, the work of Gutzon Borglum and others. Joe Davidson, known for his portrait sculpting, produced this bust of Ernie Pyle, the war correspondent. So you see, the sculpting of the 1940s and of today takes its form in many materials. And as Joe Davidson shaped the head of Ernie Pyle, so did other sculptors with their works reflect the life about them. But say, I'm going to have to close up this book now. And still, there are so many other sculptors that are worthy of mention, too. Let me show you one more statue. And don't ask me how I managed to get it down here in the den, but I got it here. It's over on the other side of the room. Now, this is the work of Christian Peterson, an Iowa sculptor. It's done in plaster. It represents a soldier of the Second World War who has just been wounded. A soldier who, in his pain, remembers the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese on December 7, 1941. With this sudden, treacherous blow, America found herself at war, deeply and dangerously at war. And Allied troops fought and died all over the world. In France, Germany, Africa, the Far East, tropical Pacific Islands. All fighting with a grim determination to avenge December 7th. The smiling boy who joined the Navy soon became a stern fighting man. And the girl who joined the Waves freed a man for sea duty. The new G.I. Joe found himself faced with a different kind of life, as he was shaped into an important part of a great fighting unit. Stayed at home, learned a few lessons too. Bought war bonds. That men were needed to work on production lines that were running 24 hours a day as we furnished supplies for our forces and our allies in the greatest industrial mobilization in history. Yes, women were needed too, and they rose to the emergency and took over machines vacated by men, now serving in the Army, Navy, and Marine. We learned to do without, as rationing swept over the country. went about winning a world war, waging our own fight at home, with our hearts scattered all over the world. The whole world paused to mourn on April 12, 1945, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt died. Just 4 months before the armistice was signed, the armistice he never saw. And literally exploding the world into a frantic desire for peace, the atomic bomb dropped on Japan by the Allies on August 6, 1945, brought on ultimate surrender. It was signed aboard the battleship Missouri in Tokyo Bay on September 2nd. Yes, for this wounded soldier, as for all of us, there are a lot of memories connected with the Second World War. This was the time when some of our well-known news analysts started to inform and educate the public. They did more than just comment on the news. They dealt with social and political theories. And they pointed out which news happenings were likely to shape the course of events. And radio, like the many other means of mass communication, took an active part in our lives. The Armed Forces Radio Service was established to broadcast music and radio programs from the States to the boys overseas. And at home, people were asked to save fats, tin cans, paper, with radio broadcasting regular announcements reminding everyone of the importance of saving these goods. And those announcements, coupled with the many posters, newspaper ads, and such, kept people informed as to what the government felt should be done to help the country pull through the war successfully. Of course, radio was a great aid to the bond drive, too. Say, I happen to think I have some posters and such here someplace. Just a minute. They're in the miscellaneous file over here in the storeroom. And miscellaneous file in this case means I don't quite know where they are file.
I wonder where he is. Howard! Oh, Howard!
Yes, dear. What is it?
Oh, there you are. I thought for a minute that you'd gone out to work in the yard. Howard, do you remember whatever happened to that dust cloth we used to clean up those boxes of pictures and such the other day?
No.
Oh. Well, what are you doing out there, Howard?
Oh, I was just looking for these World War II posters.
Well, it looks as though you were successful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I can just find the dust cloth
Oh,
out.
now, wait a minute. Don't get in a hurry. Let's talk a while. What were you going to do? Dust something?
Well, no. And, of course, I do have others, but, no, I just saw that it was missing from the closet, and I just thought I'd find it.
Well,
Put it
fine.
back.
Well, let's look at the posters now, as long as your dust cloth isn't a matter of top importance.
Well, whatever made you decide you wanted to look at those, anyway?
Oh, I was just thinking about radio and the part it played in World War II.
That seems sort of a far cry from radio to, well, posters, radio. What's the connection?
Well, these are war bond posters, and radio helps sell war bonds. So?
Oh, well, that's a good connection.
Well, I'm not just trying to be dense, but what I really had in mind was that marathon bond sale that Kate Smith pulled off in '43.
Oh, yes, I know. You mean the one where she worked from morning until after midnight making those announcements.
Yes, on every 15 minutes, pleading with people to buy war bonds. Terrific. You know that when she got through, she had $39 million pledged in war bonds?
Oh, my goodness. Well, that was certainly a record, wasn't it? And Howard, just think that. All came over the radio.
All over the radio. Which points up the fact, I think, that radio is becoming a pretty important influence.
Yes, it certainly does. Say, we're forgetting about these posters. Let's see some of them.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Here. Look at this one.
Oh, my, that's a powerful one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. What's that written up there at the top?
Doing all you can, brother.
Well, that certainly hits home. Well, what else have you got?
Well, let's see. This other one I found here. Oh, yes, it's a very friendly one.
Oh. Oh, my heavens. Less dangerous than careless talk. Well, you know, that problem of not giving away secrets, that was really an important one.
You bet it was. And that was something the broadcasting companies had to look out for, too.
Oh, we're back talking about radio again, eh?
Well, I hadn't finished my lecture.
Oh, well, go ahead, dear. Just go right on.
Yes. Didn't have much more to say, I guess. Oh, yes, I did want to mention that how important radio was in elevating the culture of America. What with the symphonies and the scientific talks and the documentary broadcasts.
Oh, now, what are you referring to there?
You mean the documentaries?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm thinking of how the social problems were dramatized. Now, the same thing was going on in the movies, too. Such problems as juvenile delinquency, slum clearance. Then there were some pretty bad medical practices exposed, too.
And you know, Howard, I remember one type of program that was a smash hit during the 40s.
What was that?
The giveaway type of program that started then.
Yes, and still going strong.
Howard, you just must admit that people, well, they practically sat with their ears glued to their radios waiting for a call from that program.
And you remember up here around the college, everybody researching in the library, trying to find out who Miss Hush was with the clues they gave them on the program.
Yes, I certainly have to agree with you, Howard, when you say that the radio really played an important part in American life during the war and after.
Rapidly becoming a very important social medium. And you know, there were a lot of very wonderful plays written then, too, by such men as Archibald MacLeish and Norman Corwin.
Oh, yes, their writing was so powerful. You know, I used to listen to those plays, and I'd think now they probably will go down as some of the country's most significant writers.
Well, and I think they will. And speaking of writers, do you recall that book that had so much to do about the effect of business on radio?
No. Which one is that?
That was The Hucksters.
Oh.
Focused a lot of attention on the radio industry.
Oh, in what way?
Well, it posed this problem. Now, are radio broadcasts conducted in the interests of the people or for the benefit of the advertisers?
Well, they seem to get that problem straightened out.
They got it straightened out to satisfaction of everyone. See, that problem caused the radio industry to kind of look into what they were doing and make amends.
Well, it turned out the best for everyone then, didn't it? And you know, Howard, this business of the radio...
Oh, it was spreading all over. Every day radio coverage was expanding.
Oh.
And you know, between the radio and the newspapers, the public was really being kept informed.
Especially during the war, we had that demonstrated.
Yes. Well, and instead of considering the radio as a not-too-friendly rival, the newspapers and the radio got together, and the result was the best news coverage in history.
I remember, for instance, how amazed we were when those pictures of D-Day came through so fast.
Oh, wasn't that something?
Oh, yeah.
Think of it. Only 4 hours after the first broadcast, the first official pictures of the invasion were on the press.
You know, reporting news through pictures certainly did boom about that time. You remember that picture, the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima?
Oh, yes. How could I forget it? Wasn't that terrific, though?
It was.
It just seemed to epitomize everything we were fighting for right in that one picture.
Howard, you must have a picture of that somewhere, you and your saving ways.
Oh, I'm sure I have. It was published in every newspaper in the country. You know, I think that's one photograph that's going to be a real collector's item someday.
Well, if you ask me, I think it already is. Let's look at it.
All right, right over here.
Okay.
You know, that photograph won a Pulitzer Prize. Was used on war posters. And it was even reproduced in an issue of War Stamps. Let's see. Here.
Oh. You know, I can understand why it would win a prize. But our correspondents covering the war did a tremendous job.
Yes, you bet they did. You know, there were over 1,700 of them. Press, radio, and magazine, men and women.
1,700. What a lot of organization that must have taken.
Yes, you bet it did. Of course, we just come through a world war to go on for experience. And the Office of War Information did a tremendous job, too. And then we had pooling of photographs and information by the correspondents, which helped.
Oh, now, how do you mean?
Well, for instance, sometimes it was just a few correspondents could accompany the troops on any certain action, so they'd pool their work. Now, for instance, on D-Day, only about 75 newsmen could accompany the first landing troops, you know, American, British, and Canadian.
Well, 75 seems like quite a few to me.
Yes, but think of the millions of people at home waiting for that news.
Well, Howard, how did so few men manage to get the news out?
Well, it was really very simple. As soon as they landed on the coast of France, they set up their portable radio transmitters and started sending out messages.
Oh, to where?
Across to London, where they were taken in charge by a single censor and passed by him to a committee of correspondents who chose the best material to be distributed to the world.
Well, was there much information sent out through that system?
Oh, tremendous.
Oh.
Over 200,000 words sent out in the first 120 hours after D-Day.
Howard, I don't know where you got those figures, but they certainly sound impressive. You know, I just can't understand how our newspapers managed to carry all that news. I seem to remember that there was a newsprint shortage during the war.
Well, there was that, and a paper shortage, too. But you see, the papers cut back their advertising space sharply in favor of war news, especially those personal reports from the correspondents.
Oh, yes, like those of Ernie Pyle.
Yes. Ernie Pyle. My, what he did for the morale of the soldier and his family, too. You know, his reports were just like a personal letter.
Oh, and how about Bill Malden?
Oh, yes, Bill Malden. Isn't he the one that drew those zany GIs and weary-looking fellas? Willie and Joe, we call them. Yes, he used to draw them for Stars and Stripes and Yank.
Oh,
Yeah.
wasn't he wonderful? You know, he just poked fun at almost everything, and always the things that the soldiers seemed to gripe about.
Yes, always. Say, I'm not even going to wait for you to ask me this time. I'd like to look at his book up front again, too. You know, his cartoons were just as funny to us who were in the First War. Some things never change.
Okay, less conversation and more action. Where's the book?
No, you sound like that captain that the boys were making fun of. Okay, we'll get it.
You say that.
Mission accomplished? Here we are.
Oh, yes, there they are. G.I. Joe.
Yeah, enthusiastic-looking couple, aren't they?
Yes, very. Oh, you know, I think that Malden's funniest cartoons are those where he's poking fun at the officers. What's the name of that one? The View. Do you have that?
Oh, yes, it's over here toward the back. I saw it the other day. There.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Beautiful view. Is there one for the enlisted men, too? How about that?
Oh, dear, let's see what else. Oh,
There.
look at this. Look at that one, Howard. Just give me a couple aspirin. I've already got the Purple Heart.
Yeah, that's the point. Well, you know, I think it's this grand sense of humor that helped pull us through.
You know, Malden's cartoons really helped us keep up our sense of morale during those years that were so grim. But say, I can't sit down here laughing with you all morning. I came down here for a purpose.
Ah, and little did you dream that you would be lured into a conversation.
Oh, well, it's happened once or twice before, so I wasn't too surprised.
Well, class dismissed. And I promise to keep a sharp eye out for your dust cloth.
Okay, Howard, thank you. You do that.
Bye now. Well, Malden's Up Front was just one of many books written about the war in the 1940s. And back at home, books reflecting every aspect of the war became very popular. All the way from William Shirer's Berlin Diary to Marion Hargrove's See Here, Private Hargrove. And there were actually very few novels written then. It wasn't until afterwards that they started to come out. And then we had Norman Mailer's The Naked and the Dead, and Jones's From Here to Eternity, and Shaw's The Young Lions, and so forth. Now, we Americans had another need during war-torn, anxious 40s.
and that was for some kind of a faith, something to hang on to. I guess that accounts for the great popularity of books with a religious and spiritual value. Look at Peace of Mind by Rabbi Joshua Liebman, for example. Why, in 1947, it outsold even the best-selling novel, The Miracle of the Bells, which in itself was a religious book, and continued atop of the best-selling list for 3 years. And book club memberships and the sale of cheap paper-bound reprints were zooming too, and we were reading a lot at home, and servicemen were living up to their label of being the doggonedest, readingest army in the world. The free reprints issued by the Armed Services edition, some 119 million volumes in all, that helped that along, of course. Hey, I wonder what Esther's doing with that piano. Heaven knows she can hardly read a note. Let's go up and surprise her.
A new talent unveiling itself, I see. Have a dust cloth.
I didn't hear you come up. You know, you must have more talent for finding things than I have for playing the piano.
Well, what were you playing?
Oh, well, not much anything. I just got started looking at some of your war music here.
I should have filed the stuff away long ago, but, some of them were so nice. You know, the songs of the Second World War were a little different than the songs of the First War. That is, they were used differently anyway.
Well, I know that they were certainly different in tempo. You know, we had swing in the 40s.
Well, yes, I know that, but what I mean is the boys didn't go off singing like they did in the First War. There was more grimness and a realization of what it was all about.
Howard, why don't you sit down here and play something for me?
Okay.
What, no classics?
Oh, you're not going to go long hair on me.
Oh, not necessarily, but you know, during the 40s there were other things written besides swing.
Well, yes, I know. In fact, we have some recordings of Giancarlo Menotti's operas.
Yes, we have The Telephone and The Medium, and The Council that won the Pulitzer Prize, and...
And how about Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring?
Yes, right, and then there were others, too. Howard Hanson's Symphony No. 2, and Stravinsky's Concerto, Ebony Concerto, and... Oh, say, da-da-da-da-da, every jukebox playing the Beer Barrel Polka, remember?
Oh, how could I forget? Oh, that recording was so popular.
Yes, well, recordings had quite enough swing during the 40s.
Well, they certainly had enough tunes to play.
Lots of tunes reflecting our attitude to the war and what the war was doing to us.
Do you remember, I left my heart at the stage door canteen and praise the Lord and pass the ammunition.
And this is the Army, Mr. Jones.
Oh, Howard, surely you must have some of them there.
Well, we remember some of those you mentioned. Let's try this one.